such selection of Chinese music. Thought it would be fun. Good morning. Stevie the Guide here on the banks of the Guadalupe River in Kerrville, Texas. I was feeling a little Chinese this morning, and so I thought I'd sort of explore some of that Chinese music, and it's beautiful, sort of tranquil background music. You can just almost hear the water dripping in the background, and the cherry blossoms, sort of coming into full bloom. If you ever saw that movie, The Last Samurai, I'm very romantic about that film, even though some people don't like the violent parts in it. But they went to great lengths to study Japan in that movie, and the attention to detail, the costumes and the settings are unbelievable. And I lived in Asia for in the years 1983 and 84, I lived in the People's Republic of China, and I worked for a Western Geophysical Company, and that it gave me an opportunity to really look into Asian culture, which I've always had a very strong kindred feeling towards. And anyway, I was feeling a little Asian this morning. I went to work there with an oil and gas exploration company. I was 24 years old, and it was 1983 and 84. No, I'm sorry. It was 1985 and 1986 that I lived in the People's Republic of China. And the cool thing about that job was I was very lucky to get it. Because the oil business had really already collapsed, and I got this job on a training team. The Chinese were developing their own internal oil fields, and the cool thing about it was that you would work two full months in China, and then they fly you to Hong Kong and give you a plane ticket back home to Houston or anywhere in that radius you wanted to go. And also give you break pay and part of your salary. Was a really rich deal for me back then. And so I'd run around Southeast Asia. I wouldn't generally go home to Houston. I'd take the plane ticket. Back then you could get refunds for the plane ticket money. So I'd put all my salary and per diem in the bank, and I'd just live off the plane ticket money for a whole month. And in Southeast Asia at that time, you could live like a king on that plane ticket money. And it was amazing. And so I ran around anywhere from, if you picture where Indonesia is, way down south of Singapore, and all the way up to about Hong Kong. That was sort of my stomping ground for a couple of years. And it was amazing. And China itself back then was extremely primitive, and I didn't really want to stay there and travel around. I do have regrets that I didn't see all the historic sites in China that I should have taken the time to see. But after 2 months in China, eating that food and living in those conditions, especially back then, where there was no accommodation for tourists, even if I did go touring, there was no accommodation. People were largely riding around on bicycles back then. The only great thing about it was it wasn't so horribly polluted on the coast of China, because most people didn't have a car. But it was just no fun to travel there. Nobody spoke English, and they didn't have any decent restaurants or hotels except in the major cities. And I don't know, I didn't travel much around there. But I did grow a deep and lifelong appreciation for Asian culture. And the time I spent in China, in Hong Kong, in Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia. That had a deep, lifelong effect on me, and a love for the Asian people and their ancient culture that goes all the way back. One of the weird things about our history here is that when you get to these ancient cultures, the really old ones with the ancient ruins, which I'm always talking about, and my life was deeply affected by the 5 years I spent in Peru around those old buildings there. But it just fed a old fascination I've had with ancient culture. And the key thing is that in each one of these very old cultures, whether it's Peru or Mexico or Cambodia or China or Japan or, pick one, Egypt, it always seems to come down to some dude came from the sky and taught us how to do all this stuff. And that's the common story in the country of China. When you trace the breadcrumb trail of history all the way back, you come to the Yellow Emperor. All right, the Yellow Emperor is some dude that came from the sky and began to teach the people all about mathematics and engineering and navigation and, gunpowder and writing. And, take a look at Chinese writing, if you will. And here's some examples in here. I just happen to have this book of Lao Tzu, Chinese philosopher. This is the Tao Te Ching. And if you're not familiar with it, it's one of the number one philosophical books to ever come out of Asia, written by a Chinese philosopher named Lao Tzu. And anyway, Chinese writing looks like this. All right. Now, how in the world did they come up with that? Take a close look at that, folks. All right. Do you suppose you could make heads or tails out of that? One day, some years ago, I was on a cruise ship, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I met the abbot of the Jade Buddha Temple in Houston. His name is the Venerable Hung Yi, and he quickly became a very good friend of mine. We had a long conversation on that cruise ship, which I think I've mentioned before. And it reminded me how much love I have for China and the Buddhist culture and just a connection that I've had with that place, the kinship and family feeling that I have had towards Asian people and Asian culture, and how I was embraced by them and invited into their homes and their temples, and how I spent the night, a couple of nights in a Buddhist monastery up in Chiang Rai, which is just outside of Chiang Mai in northern Thailand. And some monks invited me and an Australian guy to come and spend the night there back in 1985. And left a deep impression. It was down in a cave called Pajom Cave. Had 2 dragons on the stairways. And I remember being so impressed when they let us in there. And they gave us their beds. And just a lot of things that happened in my life early on that shaped the way I look at this world. And I truly believe that it was always my mission since I was born to explore this planet and the strata of humanity, to get a feel and a kinship and a familiarity with the various cultures in our planet, whether they be Middle Eastern or Asian or Australian or African, or certainly here in the United States, which you have multiple cultures here in the United States. Here in Texas, it's a lot different than people in New York or Louisiana or California. And so that's been part of what's shaped me and driven me all my life. And so anyway, a part of that education growing up was the couple of years that I got to spend over in Asia, and I'm very grateful for that. Very wise people over there that have we have a lot to learn from them. And so back to Lao Tzu. Who is this Lao Tzu guy? Who is that? Lao Tzu is Lao Tzu. I remember I had a philosophy or a sociology teacher that used to correct my pronunciation of Lao Tzu. I'd say Lao Tzu, and he'd say Lao Tzu. That was at St. Edward's University in Austin, where I graduated, finally graduated in 1987. Wikipedia says about Lao Tzu as a semi-legendary figure, was usually portrayed as a 6th century BC contemporary of Confucius. But some modern historians consider him to have lived during the Warring States period of the 4th century BC. Central figure in Chinese culture. He's claimed by both emperors of the Tang dynasty and modern people of the Li Suriname as a founder of their lineage. Lao Tzu's work has been embraced by both various movements, anti-authoritarian movements, and Chinese legalism, yada, yada, yada. He was a guy that wrote and spoke very much, an enlightened person who wrote the Tao Te Ching. And let's see here. Lao Tzu. He is an ancient Chinese philosopher and writer. He is the reputed author of the Tao Te Ching, a founder of philosophical Taoism, and a deity in religious Taoism and traditional Chinese religions. Now, what is Taoism? All right, Taoism. The Tao. When people speak of the Tao, let's just have a look real quick and see. Taoism. What is it? A Chinese philosophy based on the writings of Lao Tzu, advocating humility and religious piety. Taoism or Taoism is a philosophical religious tradition of Chinese origin, which emphasizes living in harmony with the Tao. The Tao is a fundamental idea in most Chinese philosophical schools. In Taoism, however, denotes the principle that is the source, pattern, and substance of everything that exists. The source, basically. The source. God, the universe, the creator, whatever you want to call it. God being just simply a name that comes out of the left brain logical. God is not actually something that is describable. And it's good to keep that in mind, because a lot of people like to claim that word God and put it in some kind of a structure when they haven't got a clue what it is. All they can do is grope at that through their religions and religious history and things like that. But when I read those words, the source. Taoism, however, it denotes the principle that is the source, pattern, and substance of everything that exists. What that makes me think of right off the bat is Dr. John Hagelin, who is both the head of Transcendental Meditation in the United States, the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi Institute, and he is also a particle physicist. And what Dr. John Hagelin talks about is the unified energy field, or the unified field. The unified field is the organizing force in all matter. In physics, if you break down everything, there's nothing solid. All right, and any physicist or most people in the know can tell you it's all an illusion here. It truly is kind of like a matrix environment that we live in, because even though things seem solid, and that seems solid, this seems solid. It is not. And that's a hard concept to get your mind around. But there is no solidity here on this planet. You can look at a mountain and say, wow, that's solid, solid granite, but it is not, all right? And when you break matter down all the way, down through atoms and molecules and particles, all the way down, what do you have? You have an energy field, all right? It's a unifying source field that holds all the little particles together in different shapes and sizes and forms, I mean, that's a freaky thing to try to wrap your head around, but that is so, and any physicist will tell you that. All right, there is a force that holds all the particles together in different shapes, and whether that be people or buildings or planets or the field, the Tao that keeps the universe in perfect order and the planets rolling around, it keeps this planet Earth rolling like a rotisserie around a fire pit. That keeps us just warm enough, but not too warm. Some days, like yesterday, it seemed like it was getting pretty warm here in Texas. But there's a perfect harmony about the source energy, the Tao, and a lot of people don't really get that. But the upshot of it is, not only is Dr. John Hagelin a particle physicist who knows physics very well, but he is also an advanced meditator. And what he contends, ladies and gentlemen, is that just as you break matter down all the way to its unified energy field, its Tao field, if you will, so when you break consciousness down, when you settle that left brain logical all the way down, and you can still that mind and go out of that mind, basically, and you allow fully the right brain intuitive to come up, you still everything down, where you arrive is at the same unified energy field. And having just a little practice in meditation, I can tell you that seems very plausible to me. And the more that we can understand about how to settle that mind out, we have not been trained. In fact, in this Western nation here, we have been totally discouraged to even approach this ancient Eastern philosophy of trying to meditate and still the mind. And in every practice where especially where the Christian missionaries went, and the forces of the Vatican, the military forces that went all around the planet, and the colonists and the self-righteous motherfuckers that went all over the place, killing and raping and pillaging and taking everything they wanted. I got to slap myself for that curse word. Pardon my French. I'm trying to get better at my profanity, and I will endeavor to do that. But where all of these conquerors and conquistadors, wherever they went, immediately when they came into contact with indigenous culture, they if they didn't kill them straight away, which they did often, they would strip away from the local population everything that would allow them to relax the left brain logical and promote the right brain intuitive. They'd strip it away from them. And they force them into rules and regulations of how to be normal, okay? And they take away the chanting, the dancing, the drumming, the language, the stories, the songs, all of the different rituals and things that promoted that strong spirituality. They'd take it away from them, strip it, and say, hey, let's cut your hair, put you in our clothes, make you speak our language and follow our rules and regulations, and stick them, and they take their children away and not allow them to learn the traditions, and thus breaking the chain In my travels in Colombia and working with shamanic culture, and also here in the United States working with indigenous Native American culture, what they will all tell you is that once upon a time there was a connection between the northern and southern indigenous peoples. There was an unbroken chain from Canada all the way down to Argentina, more or less. So certainly in those central southern areas. And they call it the connection between the eagle and the condor, all right? And so you had two different indigenous shamanic cultures. Shaman just means wise man, you know, but the Christians and the left brain logicals have painted shamanic culture as some kind of evil, demonic thing. And it is my experience that it's nothing of the sort. It's beautiful knowledge of natural medicine, natural healing, natural human power, natural access to a Christ consciousness that has been somehow stripped away from a lot of us. And we are not just now crawling back to that Christ consciousness that I believe Jesus was trying to teach us, and this Tao that Lao Tzu was trying to teach us, that has been stripped away, leaving us powerless followers to a large degree. And that is where I'm at with that. I picked out one little passage here. Says, it kind of grabbed me, but it's full of just little sayings, almost like poetry. And the Tao Te Ching is something that I think everybody should have a copy of. And let's see, where am I? There I am. I can see myself when I come on this channel. And anyway, Tao Te Ching. Oh, there's that nice Let Us Be cereal. What a wonderful fellow. Hey, I love you too. Hi, Logical Pranked, and Free Palestine. Hi everyone. I love all you guys. And the reason I do that is because I do love you. Whoever you are, however you are. I throw myself out there just, because I believe that if you do love people, you try to your best to be honest, all right, to be authentic. And there's a healing thing that happens when you pour yourself out there, your genuine self, honestly and authentically. And, whatever flack I get about it, I'll take it. And I'll transmute it into love and something positive. And that's what I'll do the best I can, especially with you. Let us be cereal. I love you too. Anyway, this is, what did that say? Now you made me lose my place, but I think it was number 44. Here it is. From the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu, says, fame or integrity, which is more important? Money or happiness, which is more valuable? Success or failure, which is more destructive? If you look to others for fulfillment, you will never truly be fulfilled. Now let me read that line again. If you look to others for fulfillment, you will never truly be fulfilled. If your happiness depends on money, you will never be happy with yourself. Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. Now I like that. And these little bits of wisdom are all through this book. And it just, he's always had a simplicity that appeals to me. And when you cut me right to the bone, ladies and gentlemen, I am just simply a simple slob trying to understand and trying to raise questions. And I don't pretend to know anything, but I do get a little miffed, let's say, by people who tell me they do know. And I think there's a tremendous value in saying oftentimes, we just don't know. What are these unusual parts of the Bible? Well, we just don't know. We're not going to make up something for you. We just don't really know what it means. Where did the Great Pyramid of Giza come from? Who were they? How did they do that? And what is their relation to us? Well, I find it far more satisfying if some Egyptologist were to tell me, we just don't know exactly how they built those pyramids. I find that a lot more palatable than, we took hemp ropes and, copper chisels and a whole bunch of slaves and rolled those giant stones 500 miles across the desert from the quarry at Aswan, That's ludicrous. And so I think there's a tremendous health in saying, hey, we just don't know. They say, be humble. A lot of stuff happened before you got here. And that's true. A lot of stuff on this planet happened. And we arrive and we're here just for such a short time that we just can't grasp all that has gone on around here, how everything works, and so there's a lot of wisdom in knowing. One of the things that's said in that passage I read you from Lao Tzu is to the effect of be okay with what is. You do your best and you be okay with what is. That's the one of the founding principles of Buddhism. And I'm not an expert, even though I lived for a year and a half in a Buddhist monastery. I am no expert on Buddhism, but I have lived around the monks and gotten to know them just a little bit. And if I took one single thing away from my time at Wat Nitad Sasan Akun outside of Marble Falls, Texas, the one thing I really carried away, the one takeaway from living in that monastery and doing the gardening for a year and a half was to do your best and then to be okay with what is. All right? Because if you can be okay with the way it is, we create a tremendous amount of our own suffering by wishing things were different instead of being happy with the way things are. And so we never get to really live in the present fully because we're always concerned about how to get to somewhere else. And we're always wishing that we had done things differently yesterday, or we're wishing that it could be different right now, or how we're going to change it tomorrow. And there's a lot of wisdom in what is that line I just read? Number 44. I'm going to read this to you again real quick because I just love this stuff. It says, I'm going to read it again. Fame or integrity, which is more important? Money or happiness, which is more valuable? Success or failure, which is more destructive? If you look to others for fulfillment, you will never truly be fulfilled. If your happiness depends on money, you will never be happy with yourself. Here it is. Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there is nothing lacking, the world belongs to you. The whole world belongs to you. When you realize there's nothing lacking, all right? And there's a constant creation of suffering that goes on when people think they're lacking something. And sure, there's things you want. It's good to have a desire and ambition for all sorts of things, especially a burning desire to know yourself, to know your Christ consciousness within. What was I saying the other day? The kingdom of God is within you. You just forgot. If you really spend some time and have a strong desire to know that Christ within you, and to self-examine instead of constantly looking outward, for entertainment and feedback and input. If you are settling into, and I'm talking to myself here because this is an art that takes time, but constantly be examining yourself and settling yourself down and seeing what that inner voice says, sooner or later, you're bound to find the Christ consciousness within. And I believe something magical can happen when you reach this sort of balance. And I always like to go back to that story of the walls of Jericho. How are they going to break down those walls of Jericho? Are they going to do it with a bulldozer? Are they going to blow it up with gunpowder? Are they going to storm the walls with an army and tear it all down? That's not how they do it. All right? The way that you bring down the walls of Jericho is through vibration. All right? And when your vibration reaches the right frequency, they sent those guys around the walls 7 times, blowing the trumpets. And when they got to the right pitch, all right, the right frequency, bing, those walls just fall down magically, all right? I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that is a metaphor for what happens in your consciousness, all right? And if you study the art of vibration, Nikola Tesla tells us if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of vibration and frequency. Because that is the key to everything. That is the Tao. Vibration and frequency keep all the matter particles together. Vibration and frequency can take them all apart and shape them. Vibrational frequency, if you think about it, could actually cut and shape and move and place giant megalithic stones. And if you had command of vibration and frequency, you could do anything you wanted. And that is precisely, in my opinion, what they are trying to do over in CERN, Switzerland, at the Hadron Super Collider. All right, and if you don't know what that is, hey, your tax dollars are going into it just like a lot of other countries. It's the largest machine ever built by men. All right, it's bigger than the Hoover Dam. It's a 17-mile track underneath the ground where they shoot light particles, they shoot particles the speed of light, and they smash them into each other to break apart and understand the unified energy field. All right, that's what the physicists of our day are trying to do. All right, now I think Christ would tell you that you don't have to go to all that trouble. All right, if you can just begin to understand how the most powerful computer in the world works, that there's all kinds of things that are possible. And so I believe it's simply a settling down. It's so counterintuitive, too, to settle down the left brain logical and bring up the right brain intuitive, creating a balance, a harmony, a frequency in your mind that releases this electromagnetic heart energy. And when you do that, your bandwidth opens up, just like a radio, just like, people find it so simple to understand that your telephone that you carry around with you everywhere, it operates on invisible frequency waves, little radio signals, invisible energy that floats around all around the planet. You get that, all right? But you can't understand how to make your brain do that. But your brain is far more powerful than this computer, right? And if we just understand that, and so that is my lifelong passion, folks. It is to understand how my mind works. And part of the key is to do your art fearlessly, okay? Whatever your art may be, throwing it out there just like I'm doing now. I'm not some broadcaster who's done a bunch of research and I'm, pouring it out to you in some organized way. What I am doing, ladies and gentlemen, is painting my picture. I'm singing my song. I'm throwing my heart out there onto the canvas of the airwaves in hopes that something beautiful might develop. I'm practicing my craft, all right? And that's what you do, whatever your craft is. And the key is fearlessly, to not be afraid of what the reaction is going to be. And that is how it purely comes out of your heart and into the airspace. And I don't care if, you do, shaping cast iron with a blowtorch, you carve wood, there are any number of creative things. You are a creator. All right. You are a creator made in the image of God. Kingdom of God is within you. All right. Thus, you are a creator, and you must create. You must create. You must throw it out there any old way it comes to you. And if you do, there's an unlocking. If you're not afraid of what the reaction is, there's an unlocking, a healing that goes on. And these hundreds of years of oppression that you have been subject to, whether you understand it or not, hundreds of years, humanity, especially in the West, has been oppressed, fearful of being who we authentically are, sharing our authentic self. And I've learned this from now a couple of years conducting these public events called the Forbidden Discussions, and where we just get together and we throw stuff out there that has happened to us. And people are afraid to say that they have certain healing powers, or that they see spirit guides, or they had an imaginary friend when they were a kid, or they were visited by aliens, or they've had a past life experience, or any number of things. These are all, in my opinion, folks, through my field research, these are natural, God-given human gifts, all right? They are authentic human being experiences that have happened to people. And in sharing that with other humans, there is a healing that goes on. They say, gosh, something happened to me one time. And I've never told anybody. I've always been hiding, afraid that, I'm not going to be approved of, that I'll be ostracized from the group. I will not be a part of the herd. All right. Well, I got news for you, baby. All right. Being a part of the herd only takes you so far. All right. And somehow when I was a kid, I became aware that being a part of the herd, while sometimes is good, had limiting qualities about it. All right. And being part of the herd only gets you so far, and it'll keep you in security. If security is what you want, a herd mentality is good. You can get lost in the herd. You can get protected by the herd. Look how fish, they herd together so that the predators can't get to them as easy, and all that kind of stuff. But what happens if you are a lifelong member of the herd, then you are stuck in that paradigm, in that mindset. And if all of a sudden your individuality starts to wake up, if you start to say, hey, wait a minute, is this right? If you start to question the system, all of a sudden your membership in the herd will be threatened. It's like, hey, wait a minute, that's outside the herd mentality. You can't be thinking that. Shut up, man. Get back in the herd, I heard this ex-Marine, he said when they were in basic training, he would be asking his drill sergeant questions, or he'd be saying, hey, why can't we do it this way? And the drill sergeant would say, look, Marine, you get your mind back in the box. Get back in the box, and he'd have to go back into the rules and regulations, like, oh, okay, I can't be thinking that way. And so our society has dramatically stifled and damaged your ability to think as an individual, all right? That you are a unique God-given creature, all right? That you have a unique perspective, and that perspective you take in the world however it comes to you. Sometimes it's painful and difficult. Sometimes it's beautiful and lovely. And then once you take it in, maybe for years, then something happens and it bursts out of you. Some people get this very young. Other people's, it's not until they're older. But at some point, your authentic self should come out, and you should be able to say, you know what, I really don't care what anybody thinks. I'm making this sculpture and I like it, and I'm making it purely because I like it, and it's because, it's just me. And you see these painters covered with paint, and they're, slapping stuff on the canvas and doing all kinds of weird things. But why? Because it is their own unique God-given expression. And there is healing in all that, even if it's weird, even if it's off-colored, even if you were visited by aliens, all right, which I was when I was 5 years old. I don't know that they were aliens. All I know is that when I was 5 years old, two supernatural beings, came and levitated me out of my bed when I was 5. And they transported me to the front yard and I couldn't see their faces. But they produced a little thing out of their pocket, one of them, and he shot it right here at my abdomen, and it was vibrational. I felt it go all the way through my body and up my spine, and then they transported me back to my bed, and that was it. I wasn't afraid, but this is my authentic story, all right? And I really don't give a shit much what you think about it. Now, okay, I'm sorry I said that, but I'm not afraid of your reaction to that statement, all right? That is what happened, all right? And it took me till I was well into my 50s before I could say that out loud. But when I do say those kind of things and the other amazing things that have happened to me in my life, what happens is that other people are given permission to do the same. All right, they say, hey, there's someone from our galaxy. There's someone from our star system, someone who speaks our native language. It looks like maybe he's safe to talk to. All right, and I have found that with a whole wide range of people, be they conservative, doctors, nurses, religious people, or be they, sort of really out there, bohemian star children. I've talked to the whole wide range, and I love them all. I love them all. I love you all. I love being a human being, even though it has its challenges. I love the fact that I've gotten to be here on this planet and to finally come into a place of my own. And there's something beautiful when you come into a place of your own. All right, where you are not concerned with the reactions of family, friends, and the general public. This does not concern you anymore. That's a beautiful, liberating thing. And I believe as soon as you can get to that place and sort of step out and say, hey, I like to do that. I'm reminded of, there's a scene in the movie, you remember The Color Purple with Oprah Winfrey and Whoopi Goldberg and Danny Glover. It's a Steven Spielberg movie called The Color Purple. And there's this scene where Whoopi Goldberg has been this meek, sort of downtrodden slave of her husband for the whole movie. And toward the end, she sort of pops out and says, hey, I'm going to be whoever I want to be. And if you don't like it, I'm going to stab you in the neck with this fork. And she gets in the car with Oprah Winfrey's character, and they ride off, and she says, hey, I may be black, I may be poor, I may be ugly, but I'm here, and I get to be who I want to be, who I was made to be. And she goes on to have some clothing store or something, design her own line of bloomers or something, and it was inspiring. I love inspiring things, and then her kids come back from Africa and stuff like that, and so I just encourage you as we roll up to the 6 o'clock hour, and I got to get ready to go to work, but I'm glad to be here with you. I love you, and just remember the Tao Te Ching. And I encourage you to get a copy of this little book. They make them in a little small pocket size. I used to carry one around in my car, and just pick it up and look at it every once in a while. There's simple wisdom in it. And I encourage you to be who you are and not be afraid. This is Stevie the Guide on the banks of the Guadalupe River in Kerrville, Texas. I love you very, very much. And it is, just about 6 o'clock. And whoever you guys are that are showing up, I see people popping in here. You know, I love you no matter what you want to say. I see all kinds of freaky things they say on these comments. Hey, I love you anyway. Okay? So take care, and I'll see you on the rebound.